Hi, this is Nina Griffin coming to you from Los Angeles. Welcome to the Astrology and Magic YouTube video channel. I hope that you're enjoying these videos as much as I am. Now, if you like these videos, I encourage you to subscribe because obviously you'll be notified of any new videos just as soon as they are released. And if you want them extra early, I urge you to become a patron at patreon.com. There is a link in the description of this video where you can join and you can support my work. Videos are always released to patrons quite a bit earlier than to the general public. And for the higher tiers of patrons, there are videos that are only made for patrons that are never made available to the public. So if you enjoy them, by all means, do join. I'd appreciate your support. So today, we're going to talk about a very interesting phenomenon occurring right now in the sky. And when I saw it happening, I thought this needs a video of its own because this is definitely a teachable astrological moment. It also has some interesting symbolic implications for what's going on in all of our lives and across the globe. So I'm hoping that you'll find this instructive and useful. This video can also be helpful for my horary for beginner students. So I think I'm going to assign it as an example of this particular horary phenomenon, because I think the best way to learn is to see something with your own eyes rather than just read it in a book. Now, as you can see from this chart set for today, and this is April 14th, 2020, set for Los Angeles, you can see that Venus is applying to trine Mars. Now, if you're not familiar with the term applying, all it means is that Venus is faster than Mars, and she is running to catch up to a slower planet in order to eventually complete an aspect. In this case, that aspect is a trine. Now, this is often a harmonious and flirtatious combination, as Venus and Mars would be. Venus is the planet of romance, and Mars is the planet of war. So the trine, actually, between them is often known as the aspect of perfect love. I believe that is the term that the medieval astrologer Guido Bonatti used for the trine. Now, in Greek mythology, you may be aware that Venus and Mars were actually illicit lovers. And so it's particularly powerful when we see an aspect between the two of them because it speaks of desire, attraction, a very powerful magnetism that can arise between two people or between a person and any object of desire, whether it's a thing or some kind of abstract concept that they're trying to attain. Now, normally, it would be very satisfying if we could see Venus actually complete that trine to Mars, but that is not what happens in the sky. If you look forward a few days or a few weeks, you will see that actually Venus never completes that trine to Mars. That is because she slows down and ultimately turns retrograde before she can perfect that aspect to Mars. Now, normally she would catch up to him, the aspect would perfect, and then she would pass Mars, and the trine would become a separating aspect that ultimately would just completely dissolve. But again, no, not this month. This is the month of unfulfilled promises, frustrated hopes, and postponed dreams, which for many of us may be true as we are at home and are having to put our various plans and meetings and especially Venusian activities which involve relationships and fun and socializing on hold. Now, you can see that before Venus reaches Mars, she does turn retrograde. And there is a term for this. The ancient Arabic astrologers who first sort of codified and defined this concept called this phenomenon revoking. Now, in Latin later on, this was translated as refrenatio or restraint. And you will sometimes in older horary texts see this concept described as refrenation. It's not really an English term, it's just more of an Englished version of a Latin term that actually means restraint. Now, again, it's a very simple concept. Faster planet applies to a slower planet before they can either conjoin or make an aspect. The faster planet slows down and turns retrograde, and the aspect never completes. Now, the meaning of this, when you see that in a chart or when you see it in the sky, there are several possibilities. And I wanted to share with you some of the interpretations that astrologers across the ages have given this particular phenomenon. So, in the Introductions to Traditional Astrology, which as you can see is by Abu Mashar and Al-Kabisi primarily, although there are also references to other authors like Ibn Ezra and others, translated by the wonderful Ben Dykes. There is a whole chapter on this particular concept. And if you have the book, it is page 180. And he explains what this term means, which I just explained. I'm not going to do that again. But then Ben Dykes himself, the translator, has a particular interpretation of it. So he says that, at any rate, the astrological meaning of this concept seems to be that some situation which seemed like it was going to complete unravels, perhaps due simply to changing circumstances, but perhaps even due to dissuasion or a change of heart. And here he has a footnote that says, I myself have seen this in a horary chart in which someone who had agreed to go on a journey with someone else decided to decline due to changing circumstances and personal uncertainty. So when you see this, for example, in a horary chart, or even if you see it as an important transit for someone specific where the transit just doesn't complete, you might look at it as, okay, something that you thought was going to happen is simply not going to occur. There could be a change of circumstances, or somebody changes their mind, or there is just some vagueness about the situation that precludes something from occurring. There's another interpretation that's similar, and this is from the book Beginning of Wisdom, and this is a translation by Meira Epstein. The author is the medieval astrologer Abraham ibn Ezra. And this is on page 134 of this particular edition. And it says here, the significator, if in cancellation, he calls it cancellation here instead of restrained or revoking, indicates that there may be circumstances that may destroy the matter. So again, the matter, whatever it is, the object of desire, the relationship, whatever is going on, is going to be impeded, and ultimately it will not come into being. William Lilly also has a wonderful example from his book, which is Christian Astrology, if you can see that, by William Lilly. And this is on page 111. Here he calls it refrenation, and so this is one of the texts I was referring to that uses that Englished Latin term. He says there's another manner of prohibition, by some more properly called refrenation, as thus Saturn in 12 degree of Aries, Mars in 7 degrees, here Mars hastens to a conjunction of Saturn, but before he comes to the 10th or 11th degree of Aries, he becomes retrograde, and by that means refrains to come to a conjunction of Saturn, who still moves forward in the sign. Nothing signified by the former conjunction will ever be affected. So again, he's talking about it primarily from a horary context. So in a horary chart, if you are signified by Venus and the object of desire or the person of desire is signified by Mars, and you see that Venus is about to reach Mars but doesn't quite get there, then he says it means that the matter will never occur. All right. Now, what does that mean for all of us? Well, like I said, on a very global and general scale, I think we all have things we would rather be doing than be necessarily sitting at home waiting out the pandemic. And so I think in general, this is a very appropriate aspect for this spring, where so many of us have had plans canceled and just our lives turned upside down in all different ways, where we were hoping that something would occur and then it will never perfect, or at least it won't perfect in the very near future. We will have to wait for things to be a little bit more open and for the stars to be just a little more propitious. Now, let me give you some timing, because I think there's a little more to it than just saying, hey, sorry about your dreams. What I would say is the trine will actually be the closest on April 17th. When I say it's the closest, it means the closest that Venus will get to that trine of Mars is about 1 degree away. So that's just a few days forward from here. This is the 14th. So in about 3 days' time, they will get to about a degree of each other. But then Venus begins to slow down and ultimately she turns retrograde. Now, around April 17th is sort of when the peak in some ways of that frustration really reaches its highest intensity. After that, very gradually, I don't think it's going to be noticeable day to day, but I think you may see it week to week. We will gradually after April 17th, see municipalities start to open up a little bit more. We'll see some countries open up a little bit more. In the US, some states. This will take time, and of course, every place does it on their own schedule, and they'll do it differently depending on how confident they feel and the means they have for trying to control this pandemic in the future. So what I think will happen is, starting around April 17th, the frustration reaches its peak, and then gradually it starts to dissolve as Mars and Venus draw further and further apart. Now, by the time Venus turns retrograde on May 12th, we actually might recognize that things have changed, but then some of that frustration will have abated. And as I have explained in my previous video, which, by the way, if you wanted to look at that Venus and Gemini playlist, I highly recommend it, because these videos all go together and they explain the same phenomenon from different angles. You will find that some of that frustration will have relaxed a little bit, right? Just as that trine was the most intense around April 17th, as the two planets are going to be out of orb with each other, you will find that it'll be a little bit easier to connect with people, and it'll be a little bit easier to do the things that we enjoy, which is just such a Venusian keyword, right? Now, again, I think around Venus's retrograde is when we're going to see some really major steps forward into the opening up of commerce, into the opening up of socialization. Of course, it's still going to be different and weird because Venus will be retrograde. So it's not exactly a return to normal. It's a return to a different kind of normal for a while. So I would expect that, some of Venus's retrograde period is going to feel like an adjustment. It will be a return to a more normal routine, but under different rules and on different terms. Relating is not going to be the same this spring as it has been up till now. All right, so thank you very much for watching. My name is Nina Griffin, and again, I urge you to subscribe if you would like to see more of these videos. And if you would like to become a patron, I would appreciate your support as well. Thank you, and see you soon.